Okay, good evening. Welcome to the second Kyushu Roundtable. Basically, the idea is to have live, in-person discussions about news and current events that affect all of us here in Fukuoka. My name is Szasz. I'm the publisher of Fukuoka Now. I'm from Canada. I've lived here in Fukuoka for a long time. And Fukuoka Now has been on a mission for a long time as well. And that mission has been to share information about Fukuoka and Kyushu to help internationals have more comfortable, more enjoyable time here in Fukuoka. We also see ourselves acting as a bridge between the international communities and local Japanese as well. So we have four parts. Kyushu News Flash, we're going to go over some recent news, then we're going to talk about the main story, and then we're going to have voices from the room, and that's where you guys really take over. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists. From the Netherlands, you have Leonie Habraken, and she's business innovator at Kyuden International. Leonie, applause. Thank you. And Kirk Patterson, joining us back from the first event. And he's president of Konpira Yacht Services, former dean, Temple University, Japan. Kirk. And with that, let's get into part one. Kyushu News Scan. First story. I will go ahead and I'll read them and then we'll get comments from our panelists. Cambodia driver training. A Fukuoka-based driving school has launched a program in Cambodia to train truck drivers for work in Japan, with a target of 4,000 drivers over 5 years. It's a direct response to the logistics labor shortage, and a sign that companies are now building talent pipelines overseas rather than waiting for supply to recover here. And next is an example of Kyushu connecting outwards. Another example. Kyushu India Business MOU. Kyushu's regional chambers of commerce have signed a new agreement with their counterparts in India to expand business ties. The goal is to help local companies access one of the world's fastest growing markets, but it also reflects a shift. Kyushu is looking beyond Tokyo and building its own international economic relations. And next, we have a rather attention-getting Kyushu internal strategy story here. This is the Kitakyushu Shinkansen commuting subsidy. Kitakyushu is now subsidizing Shinkansen commuting between Kokura and Hakata, offering monthly incentives to people who live there but who work in Fukuoka. It's a practical attempt to solve two problems at once: population decline in regional cities and high housing pressure in Fukuoka. All right. And next is our story that, it's not only about workers looking for a place to sleep, it's about tourists. JR Kyushu, overnight train idea. With major concerts expected to draw large crowds, JR Kyushu is considering allowing passengers to stay overnight in parked trains due to hotel shortages. It's a creative workaround, but also highlights how the infrastructure is struggling to keep up with spikes in tourism and with event demand. And we have another example of Kitakyushu thinking outside the box. Next story. Kitakyushu Airport Hangar camping. Kitakyushu Airport is launching a premium overnight experience where guests can camp inside an aircraft hangar beside a real passenger jet. It's high priced and limited, but it reflects a broader shift toward experience-driven tourism rather than high volume or volume alone. And finally, one more story that just broke last evening that caught my attention because it's media-related. Fukuoka radio stations explore integration. 3 Fukuoka-based stations, ArkKB, KBC, and Love FM, have begun exploring the possibility of integration of their operations. It reflects a broader shift in media as streaming grows and listener habits fragment, forcing traditional broadcasters to rethink how they operate. So those are just 6 of many, many stories that we have online, and you can get in our newsletter and all that, but let's throw it over to our panel here.
Actually, all of it interesting. The ones I thought were interesting, the first one was about the truck driver training.
Number one.
Yeah, that one, yeah. I looked up that. At first I thought, well, that's weird or unusual, but actually it's not something unique to Fukuoka or to this particular company. 2 years ago, the Japanese government expanded the specified skilled worker SSW category to include truck drivers. And so this company is responding to that. The government set a target of 20,500 drivers in 5 years to come through that program. That this local company is targeting 4,000. So they're trying to take a pretty big chunk out of the national total truck drivers. So, which is interesting to see a local company really trying to take advantage of a new government initiative. Two things struck me about this, though. One is, okay, you train the drivers overseas, and they do training in Japanese traffic law and basic language skills and all that. But common issue with all SSW visa people coming to Japan is what support did they get? Housing, various support. They cannot come with their families. They have to come as individuals. And when they come, how are they integrated into society? You may get those truck drivers, but are they integrated? Do they get paid the same wages as Japanese truck drivers? So I have a question about how well they are treated under that program. But also, the second issue is truck driving is moving towards autonomous vehicles.
Right, yes.
And so you may bring in, a few years from now, some truck drivers from Cambodia, but will there be any jobs for them? Or will the few jobs that are left go to the more experienced Japanese drivers? Okay, 2 points.
All right. And your other story? What else?
The other one was about the India MOU. Later we're going to talk about global talent in Fukuoka. And so the article sort of focuses more on Japanese companies investing in India and this helping Japanese companies maneuver through the maze of regulations in India. But I thought it was more interesting for the opposite perspective of having Indian workers, skilled workers, engineers, IT people coming into Kyushu. It could be a real benefit to Kyushu. But I put on my skeptical hat, and I used to work in Tokyo for a long time, and in various situations I was involved in signing or supporting MOUs in various sectors. And I would say of the dozens that I was involved with, one way or the other, maybe 10% only had a significant influence or impact. So on this, what are they doing to translate the MOU into action? How do they measure the effects? What are the goals? If it doesn't work after a few years, do they cancel it? It's nice to put it on the shelf, but what do they do later?
And we're talking about it tonight.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's one point.
Yes.
That they've done.
Yes.
Okay. Leonie, what stories caught your eye?
So the first one about Kitakyushu, about the trains. This one, yeah. So you see a lot of these programs around Japan, moving people to different locations. There's one in Tokyo. If you move with your household, you get around about 1 million to relocate. You have to stay around for 5 years. If you come back, you have to pay the money. This one is about Kitakyushu. It's like a 10,000 points you get if you move. Sorry, I should start from the beginning. You live in Fukuoka, you move to Kitakyushu, and you get then 10,000 Western points or West points from JR West. And I just have a quick look at how much a commuter pass was from Kitakyushu to Fukuoka. That's around about 60,000. So maybe your company is going to pay it, and you can keep the 10,000 points yourself to spend in supermarkets, shops, or anything. But if you have to do the 60,000 yourself, minus 10.
I wonder if a company's going to pay for a Shinkansen. They can just say go on the regular train and save 50,000 themselves. Yeah.
True, I know.
Well, you work for Kyuden, though.
Two colleagues of mine use this Shinkansen, and they get they was completely 100%
Really?
compensated.
Oh, wow.
One lives in Kumamoto, so it's quite far as well.
These would be executives.
Not exactly, not
Really?
higher.
Okay.
No, just around the level of manager.
Okay.
So 10,000 points, and you have these Western points. I forgot the names of the shops you can use them, but they're not everywhere to freely use.
Wester points, they're called. 10,000 yen worth of Wester points. Have anyone heard of Wester points?
I never heard of them before.
Yeah, I don't know if you had them. What could you use them for? I have no idea.
Sounds good. I think overall, for example, for me, the 10,000 points, if I have to pay a bit of the Shinkansen or not, I'm not sure in that sense, but I don't think it's worth it. I can just move to a bigger, mansion for that amount of money.
And what about your second story?
Also about Kitakyushu. This one is quite funny, camping in the Kitakyushu Airport. So for one night stay, you pay about 300,000, which is quite expensive. You can go to Europe and have a nice holiday. So it's a bit, seriously, it's not only staying. You can talk to the local, to the mechanic of the airplane. You can get some extra information. There's a sauna, so there are some extra things. Dinner is included, but still, it's a lot of money. But I think these geeky travels passion travels, I kind of do enjoy them. It's funny, if you're really into it, maybe you have the money for it. A colleague of mine is really fan of trains, and he bought a house in front of Takeshita Station, so he can see the train standing every day, like on the parking area there. I do think it's a nice idea. It's pricey, but it's a nice idea. I do like the fact that they use like an asset or maybe it's not being used that much. It doesn't give any revenue, but by this means you can create extra revenue. Kyushu Electric also has looking into these things. Like there was an old thermal power plant in Busan, and they made it a Mirai fish farm, so for salmon, and also one in Satsuma Sendai, also an old thermal power plant, and they're making it into a circular hub. They haven't decided yet on what they're going to do, but probably recycling waste and maybe combined with tourism as well, like a hotel or cafe. Still working on it. Actually, last year there was the Osaka Banpaku, the Osaka Expo, and the Dutch Pavilion. They were thinking of moving that to Satsuma Sendai to relocate it. So kind of like circular economy. The architect already kind of thought about that can be easily uninstalled. And I really had conversations in the company to move it to Satsuma Sendai. It didn't happen in the end, which is a bit of a shame. Now it's in Awaji, like Onion Island near. So, but I've heard it's probably a bit delayed in building it up.
No, I like what your comment there about using these unutilized facilities, and Kitakyushu Airport is underutilized. There's no question about that, so looking at ways to do that. Okay, well look, why don't we open this up to the floor. Does anyone have any comments or questions about some of the stories, the ones that the panelists talked about, or anything else? Can you use the microphone?
Very short.
Very short?
I just wondered, for 300,000 yen, I want to came into the business class of the plane.
Business class. Well said, well said. Good idea. Anything else? Anyone else?
Hello everyone, I'm Sam Cushman. I'm a graduate student at Kyushu University studying urban geography. I'm with Kirk on the skeptical hat with the MOU with the Memorandum of Understanding, especially for chambers of commerce. They always kind of struggle to find things to keep themselves relevant. And I used to work in public relations or strategic communications really for a trade promotion organization, a nonprofit government organization back in the United States. And it would be my job to write the headlines about MOUs all the time for these various organizations. And unless there's a specific bullet point in these headlines of like, hey, these are the 1, 2, or 3 business projects we're actually working on to benefit either of our membership or constituents, they're probably just one of those like headline things to say, yeah, in the future, if we have some, area of cooperation or area of synergy or whatever, we'll work on that together. We'll be future partners for one another. But in the meantime, we'll do this, we'll shake hands, we'll take some photos, generate a headline, and probably just, if something does come up in the future, then you can use the MOU framework as sort of the basis or understanding of, whatever it is, of doing whatever it is you want to do. So that's kind of how I feel about MOUs.
Yeah. It's a first step.
First step.
Yeah. Thinking positively.
Generously speaking.
Generously the first step. Anyone else? Yeah. Pass that back to Dan.
My name's Daniel Yoder. I live and work here in Fukuoka. Just thinking about that story about the incentives that were given to people to move to Kitakyushu. And I was really racking my head to think of something positive to say about it. And I think I found it. But basically, like from my perspective, when I looked into it, I'm like, well, this just doesn't make sense. It's just not enough to get anybody to do that. But then I thought, well, they're probably a insignificant amount of people who are sort of on the fence. Maybe they have family in Kitakyushu. Maybe there's a little bit of, there can be a lot of reasons, I think, where even a small little tip, a little bit of a finger on the scale might make a big difference. So for that reason, I think there's maybe sort of a silver lining to something that might almost seem kind of ludicrous on its face.
Perhaps some companies might take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Can you pass the mic back?
We've been daisy chaining this back all the way to me, it feels.
Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Carl Bacheji. I work with Fukuoka City Hall. And I work in tourism, so 2 points kind of really, not resonated, but first of all, the point about the airport, the hangar. I feel like this kind of thing is really if you market this towards incentive tourism, this actually makes a lot of sense because those are usually companies that are paying on behalf of these things and not individual groups. So I feel like for certain types of maybe aerospace companies that want to plan trips for people coming into the country, it's actually a pretty good idea. Because if you're paying individually, of course, that's a big, but for people that are trying to have a unique experience or unique venue, that's actually quite interesting. And then the second one I wanted to talk about is the overnight subway card usage scheme. The overnight subway card staying for concerts. Working in tourism, you see a lot of stuff about the kadoritsu, or the amount things are being used. And during some of these concerts, I think the final tour of that group, Arashi or something, is going on. It's unbelievable how far, since I work in MICE tourism, there were a lot of different companies that wanted to organize events, but they couldn't book rooms in hotels in the city because of that concert. So a lot of them couldn't actually come to the city. So it's actually this problem. It's very interesting to see how people are using things that are defunct or unused as a way of generating possible, financial benefits among other things. So I just thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So Laurie?
Thank you. I'm Laurie Griffiths. I'm a software engineer here in Fukuoka. I wanted to talk about this same one as well, because they're talking about trains here, but actually this is happening already. I don't know if anyone here uses car sharing, but very often you get a car sharing car in the morning and it's icy cold in the middle of summer and you realize, someone just slept in this car. You can stay the night for I think they do an overnight rate of 2,500.
Wow, people are sleeping. You
people
rent a
are
car and you
definitely
sleep in it.
sleeping
Are you saying instead of renting a hotel,
Yeah.
people rent a car
Oh, absolutely.
and sleep in it?
I've rented them in the daytime and it's clear someone has slept in there overnight. Because the price, if you miss your last train or something, it makes sense. So, yeah, I'm just seeing all these knock-on effects from big concerts, full hotels. Now you're getting fined if you go to markets and park in there, but they think you're going to a baseball game when you shouldn't be. The usage of all this stuff is getting pulled out of skew because of these big kind of demand spikes.
Didn't know that. Interesting.
Hello, yeah. I'm Tian, and I'm just working for JR Kyushu, so I want to give some comment on this issue. And also, I'm working in the travel industry too, so the same day, I have customer who cannot book a hotel, who paid about 50 or 60,000 yen for a hotel on the same day. So you can see the hotel normally is around 10,000, but I paid 50,000 just for the same night. So this is a very high demand day, and there's no hotel in the whole city. And I was thinking about that, and then my company showed this one.
Was this your idea?
No. Yeah. But I do have this idea because I saw a news. I think there's a bus company in some other part of Japan who is doing that. Use their bus as a hotel at night for the customers who cannot pay for the high hotels. I was thinking, wow, that's a new good idea. Why our company just use our train or bus? We also have bus company in our company, so do the same thing. And then really they did this one. But unfortunately, they're doing it. They did it, but they are doing it, but they still be very caution about the safety things. So the light will be on all night. So you cannot really sleep well on the train. So the light will be on.
But this is the 7 stars train, right?
It's 3 stars. Yeah, it's like the Kamome. The gray one, the gray
Gray
like
one.
express train will be used as the
Wow.
hotel.
So this is really happening. When we published this story, it was an idea,
Yeah.
but it is actually happening.
Yeah. We are already received the reservation through the internet right now. So
How much is it?
it's like 7,000 or like 8,000
And
something.
you sit up. You so just you know,
You sleep, but you're gonna get 2 seats. So they give you 2 seats. You know, there's always like two by two, right? So you get 2 seats for like 7,000 or 8,000 yen. So.
Well, I've
for two
also
seats.
heard of like when they have big events, it's like World Cup or something. Don't they have like cruise ships come into the city nearby? I think they actually have the cruise ships come in and take up some of the slack. Fukuoka had it was a Lions Club event about 15 years ago, and I think that was so far the record in terms of people coming in. And they had people attending this event here in Fukuoka from staying in hotels in Kumamoto, and because there was just not enough hotels. A lot more hotels now, but still not enough, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Not
JR
enough.
Kyushu is building more hotels.
Yeah, we are building a new hotel around Hakata station, but still not enough. So right now, as for my company, I'm right now working in the travel industry. Sometimes I have to book. I try to book through my company's hotel, but they say we don't need you because even without you, we can fill all our rooms for the FITs. So and they pay more, and they
Right.
they are more easy to take care. So yeah.
Okay, good. Time for
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there going to be like a women's car as well?
Yeah, they also have we also have one like women's car. In Japan we always care about females than male. So
Okay, if anyone has, if not, we'll move on to the next section. Part 2, we're calling the main story. After last month's event here, we got some feedback saying people wanted to talk longer about one topic. So we thought that's what we try out today, and we're calling this the main story. And the topic is talent wars. Can Kyushu compete for global talent? Across Japan, labor shortages and demographic change are forcing cities to compete for international professionals, entrepreneurs, and researchers. Kyushu is no exception. And while the region is becoming more international, many global residents eventually move elsewhere, apparently. But we have a room full of international residents here. In fact, this event we had, I think a total of about 50 people signed up. 45 of you, I think, are in attendance now, and from 21 different nationalities. Kirk, do you want to start us off?
So the title, how can Kyushu compete for global talent? And I would rephrase the question. I would say, can global talent make Fukuoka an international hub? Okay, I would change the focus from Kyushu to Fukuoka because I think we need a certain critical mass of global talent, international talent. If you spread it around all of Kyushu, it loses its impact and its power. So I think that it's better to have the conversation focus on what we do just in Fukuoka to bring global talent together. In general, I think having a Kyushu-wide theme for these events is great, but on this particular topic, I think it's better if we just focus on Fukuoka. And then what do we mean by global talent? Depending on where you're sitting, that may mean young entrepreneurs, it may mean senior executives in multinational corporations, it may mean researchers or academics or whatever. So it means many things. So there won't be one way to approach an international talent, a global talent. So whatever we talk about has to attract many different people, many different types of people, different stages of their careers and different types of expertise. How many people know the Keizai Toku? Keizai Toku? Yeah. The special economic zone, which started 30, 40 years ago. Prime Minister Koizumi started it. That's actually a great program. It has gotten watered down over the years, but was actually a very powerful force for change in Japan. And Fukuoka is allows local governments to apply for relaxation of national laws and standards to support certain objectives. and Fukuoka is a Keizai Toku. I don't know what the current status of that is, but if that Keizai Toku could be re-engineered to focus on bringing in global talent. What are the things? I know Fukuoka City has done some things to bring in global talent, entrepreneur visas and all of that, but maybe using Keizai Toku as a way to make it easier for foreigners and foreign companies to come to Fukuoka. It's a program that already exists. Fukuoka has already registered as a Keizai Toku, so that could be a foundation for more internationalization. As Nick mentioned, I used to be the head of Temple University, Japan, and a lot of the graduates, all the graduates are very internationally minded people. When I was the dean, they were mainly Japanese. Now it's mainly non-Japanese. But they were all very international. They were bilingual, multilingual. They often would, after graduation, would move overseas and then come back. And I think there's an opportunity to attract those internationally minded Japanese people to come to Fukuoka. I'm still in touch with about 100 or so of my graduates. And many of them, they write me now and say, Dean Patterson, what should I do with my life? I'm coming back to Japan, where should I go? I don't want to go to Tokyo. It's too busy, too expensive, but I want to have an international job. I want to be working with foreigners in international environments, but I don't want to be in Tokyo. And so I said, well, come to Fukuoka. But I know, in fact, that Fukuoka is not really that international. But if there's a way to get a critical mass of international activity, that could bring in more internationally minded Japanese, which then makes it more attractive to foreigners to work here. So it's not just foreigners talking to each other, it's foreigners and internationally minded Japanese working together, and becomes a virtuous circle. And I think that's, Fukuoka, we're talking earlier, Fukuoka, there's Tokyo, Osaka, and all the other regional cities. And I think Fukuoka needs to break out of that and have a distinctive number, very, very strong distinctive number 3, and that could be being international, being an international hub, bringing in international talent, be they gaijin or non-gaijin. And I think that's an opportunity for Fukuoka. And within that, and this goes back to the Indian MOU article, although there's a lot of Westerners here, because real opportunity is leveraging more the Asia connection. I don't think Fukuoka, although Fukuoka says we're the window to Asia or whatever, I don't think Fukuoka is really doing enough to capitalize on the geographic location and history of the city. And so doing more to encourage companies to establish their Japanese headquarters in Fukuoka, not in Tokyo or Osaka, or bring in research institutes or factories or whatever. A lot of things can be done to connect to the Asia aspect of Fukuoka's identity. So it's international, but I think particularly it's going to be Asia and how you segue that. And last, related to Temple University now is really booming. They now have 3 campuses, 2 in Tokyo and 1 in Kyoto, and they're bulging at the seams. I think it would be great if Temple could establish their 4th campus in Fukuoka. So it gives more opportunities for internationally minded people here, continuing education programs, graduate programs. Undergraduates come here, and after they graduate, they stay in Fukuoka. So if you wanted to find one sort of trigger mechanism to really stimulate change, if Fukuoka could make a proposal to Temple University to establish a campus here, offering some incentives and all that, I think Temple would be seriously interested in it and might well come. Temple used to have a master's in TESOL program in Fukuoka, and they can establish a full campus here now, and that would, I think, have a huge amount of benefits, for decades.
It's interesting. I've never heard that. We talk about building, new international schools, like secondary level or something like that. I've never heard anyone propose having a higher education facility, international one here in Fukuoka. That's an interesting idea.
Well, and APU in Beppu is is a good example of that. But APU, a lot of what APU did, they actually modeled it on Temple University, and they're very successful in their own way. But I think Temple University in Japan, Fukuoka, could be much better. If you put it in the city center or fairly central location, it could really be something.
Okay. Well, thanks. We'll pass the mic on to Leonie. And,
Yeah, I just want to quickly comment. So, like, I think the gateway to Asia is very important. I just know about foreigners coming from Asia. If I look at the company I work for, like Chinese, Koreans, we got like more people working from that area. So we're talking about foreigners, but then more maybe about the Western foreigners. I don't really always have to view about the Asian people coming in. Just want to, make that kind of clear in the beginning. So I work at Kyushu Electric, and I think, like what you mentioned as well, it would be really good to have more international companies, more international organizations. Kyushu Electric is quite domestic, I think you all know it. I work for Kyuden International, that's part of Kyushu Electric Group. So Kyushu Electric is a power company, you've got transmission and distribution, and we, Kyuden International, do overseas projects. And it can be electricity power projects, and I think about in 25 countries. And I think about like power plants, investing mostly in power plants, or doing the management and operations, but also other infrastructure. And I work in business innovation. Business innovation looks kind of for projects or technologies or ideas that are gonna kind of shape the future. Things like hydrogen, for example, but also new type of batteries. But also we work now with a small startup from Germany who have a satellite analysis company. So from satellite images, they can do AI analysis, and we use it for our transmission and distribution because they can see the trees growing close to the transmission lines. In the beginning, I thought, wow, that's really a bit simple solution, but it's really impressive. They can also predict the growth, that they can see the type of tree, and so they can also, in a couple of years, which are the most risk areas, but also if there's a disaster, landslide, they can also analyze quickly where the high priorities are.
does Kyuden hire many non-Japanese?
Nope.
Not yet.
Not yet. They're looking for diversity. I know they had a bit of some bad experiences, and I think that also kind of the motivation or the enthusiasm became a bit less. This Kyushu Electric, if you want to enter the company, then it's really like you can enter as a mid-career hire. It is only 1 year opportunity to get hired in April.
Or even once a year? Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
once a year for Kyushu Electric. For Kyuden International, there are mid-career hires, and they can enter any month. So we see, if we compare Kyuden International to Kyushu Electric, I think we've got like a 20% mid-career hires, but Japanese mostly, and then sometimes people from overseas as well. But mostly Chinese, because we have a lot of projects also in Asia. From that sense. And yeah, so for my bit about, I want to keep to the main story, but a little bit about my story maybe as well. So why did I move to Fukuoka? In the Netherlands, I was already doing Aikido, and the teacher came every year to teach in the Netherlands. So that's why I thought, hey, I know already a lot of people when I moved to Fukuoka. And I had been here on a holiday as well. But a group of people, we did Aikido in Tokyo, Hiroshima, Kyoto, Fukuoka, and the city was really nice to live, and it's really easy living. So I quit my job in the Netherlands and I moved to Fukuoka. First year I was an English teacher, and then within the dojo somebody mentioned, hey, Kyushu Electric is looking for a foreigner to support an event. So I applied. I had a casual interview with like 7 people, and I was a bit like... For me, it would be just a cup of coffee. And I got selected and hired. And it's a really very domestic company. In the main office, there's like 8,000, 9,000 people working over there. And when I sometimes walked into the elevator, already people pushed the floor of the bottom of my floor.
They knew where you're going.
Yeah, like you're working there. Okay, I'll push it for you. So it's good. So working for a Japanese company, it also has these things like reporting is a lot on the focus, sharing emails with everybody, which I always think is not really necessary. Thinking about how to also organize the header, like who higher position, if there's a high position people, I'll put them first, just to make sure. So those things are typical of the Japanese organization, if you see that. We also have a 3-year rotation system, so every 3 years you can be rotated from department. It can feel negative, but I feel like it gives me the opportunity to try new things. So I've worked for different departments, from ESG to IR, and now for innovation. So I think in a Western company, you wouldn't have the opportunity to switch that much and to build a career in that sense. Looking at the main story, I think what you mentioned were really good points. I think bottom-up approach is really good to make a change happening. I think also Japanese culture also a bit top-down. I know there was a Team Fukuoka event. They started in 2021. Kind of big companies came together. Kyushu Electric was one of them, I think the big 5 at that time. And they also thought about how to make Fukuoka a more international appealing hub. At that time, Hong Kong was kind of...
They were trying to establish or give Fukuoka a chance to become, again, it was a special economic zone initiative, I believe, to become a center of finance in secondary hub to Tokyo, I imagine.
I know, like Ikebe-san, the Szasz was involved there as well at the time, and we also talked about it, how to get these companies across, but it is a difficult situation. I think at that time we also discussed.
But what's difficult, do you think? I mean, what are the hard sells? Why aren't there more foreign capitalized companies in Fukuoka? Over to pass it, Doug.
Hi guys, Doug Weber. I run a company that makes high-end coffee equipment. We sell all over the world. I just happen to be based here, but my company's in the US, Taiwan, Japan, Germany, etc. Big reason for me, and this is, I think, affects a lot of people at some point in their career, is you're going to have, or likely to have, children and try to raise families here, and the opportunity to put them into attractive schools is not so attractive. There's pretty much one option, and it's okay. And I'm like at that point right now where it's like, okay, are we going to value like our access to nature or the kids' education? And it becomes a really, really difficult thing. Having that problem solved, not at the university level, but actually like raising a family here, that's like a good 15-year chunk of like a career, and it usually happens right where people are kicking ass in their jobs and doing stuff and starting companies. It's like, how do you solve that? You have to have a place to put your kids. What do we do there?
As the father of an 8-year-old, I agree. It's a challenge. We have a daughter, and fortunately there is a bilingual elementary school in Fukuoka, one of only 5 in all of Japan, and it's half English, half Japanese. There's a Japanese teacher, American teacher at the front. She does not study English, she studies subjects in English. So she's in grade 3 now, and her English is almost native speaker level. The kids are not allowed to speak to each other in Japanese, and it's if you're a boy, you're out of luck. But it. Yes, yeah, and it's a really good school, but that's about the only choice. But anyway, I forgot to mention one thing in my talk, and that is, and what you said reminded me. Whatever we can do to make Fukuoka an international hub where global talent can thrive, it's not a 1 day, 1 year initiative. And it reminds me, anybody know Seto Uchi DMO? Yeah, Seto Uchi. So Seto Inland Sea, they established a DMO, direct marketing organization, 20 years ago to promote Seto Inland Sea to foreign tourists. The Naoshima Benese Art Islands was part of that initiative. And for years, people were critical of what they were doing, and I was actually skeptical about what they're doing. But they actually did a really good job in the end. Some ups and downs and detours. But 10 years ago or so, New York Times rated as one of the top 50 places to see in the world. International events and tourists and all that. So, I run a marine services company. I welcome foreign yachts into Japan. I help foreign yachts enter Japan, cruise around Japan. And very often, I say, well, why are you coming to Japan? They say, I want to go to the Seto Inland Sea. And they're small boats, 10 meters, but I also have 50 meters, 70 meters super yacht clients. And they're coming, and they want to go to Seto Uchi. And so that was a 20-year project. It was funded by corporations and the public sector. They seconded employees to a 200-person office in Hiroshima. And they really built a great website and blah, blah, blah. So it took a couple of decades and a lot of investment, but it really paid off. And I think Fukuoka could do something similar and also be successful.
We had two comments. We've had one, Doug, talking about sort of lower education or high quality lower education for children, and you talked about having international class higher education, and maybe Fukuoka could become a center of good education.
Hi, my name is Lalit Lankatilik. I'm a 75-year-old man, retired from the UN, and decided to live here in Fukuoka. And I met
Are you from Sri Lanka, right? Sri Lanka.
originally a long time ago. So one point that I want, because people of my age, one point that attracts Fukuoka so much is, which was not mentioned, is the medical institute. Fukuoka University is one of the best for cancer and heart in this whole area. But as you know, the corporate culture or medical culture in Japan is they are not aggressively marketing any of this. And my colleagues from the UN who could not get cured in the US and Europe came here. And they are okay now. Okay. And I have been in hospitals in the US and UK and Thailand. And I got the best treatment ever here. So that is one point that is not being marketed,
Being promoted, or awareness is lacking.
Yeah, and let me extend that argument to practical thing. Now, if you can have nurses who could speak English, that will be just fantastic. So, like Fukudai, for example, can establish a nurses training school and bring people from Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand and train them. And you will have, of course, you have to understand the hospitals are running short of staff. They are really struggling. The nurses are struggling. So, this is one initiative that somebody should promote, I thought. And we could attract lots of medical tourism to Fukudai and Kyuden, both. And that is one thing. Education you covered. That's, I don't want to expand on that.
All right, we're going to keep it moving. Does anyone else another comment? Or? Anyone else from that? Okay, Rod. Thank you.
In my mind, I think one of the things, Rod Gatula, I'm retired and then teaching here. Just moved, my wife's from here. So 4 years in Japan, and this is my first time in Fukuoka. But I think one of the points we're missing here is the national narrative. And before Kyushu can develop, before Fukuoka can develop, Japan has to decide what they want their role to be in the international community. And if it's just come here, spend your money and leave, without citizens' rights, without supports for people having those. Right now, people don't know the future. Now, if I'm going to, even on a personal level, if I'm going to buy a piece of property, if I'm going to buy a house, or if I'm going to do something like that, I want to know that I'm able to maintain that, have the right to ownership, be able to sell it, so forth and so on. And so I think there's some kind of, right now the national narrative can be a counterweight to trying to accomplish what we want to do. And even when I see things like, can Fukuoka draw international talent? Are we talking about Cambodian truck drivers when we're talking about international talent? Because there's also kind of an Arab elitism to some of this. And I think if you want a true international community, you need people from all walks of life to be able to, to contribute. And we would say sometimes when we would talk about the importance of leadership, leadership's more important than management until you run out of toilet paper. And so if you don't have people in your 7-Elevens, if you don't have people driving trucks, if you don't have nurses, then it's hard to have the infrastructure to develop an international community. So I think there needs to be a greater connection between the local and the prefectural governments and the federal government, if that's what their goal ultimately is.
Excellent. Good comment. Before your comment, how many people are self-employed? Okay. how many? Okay, so you're not self-employed, then you're employed. The rest of you are employed, right? Okay, good. That's good to know. Fatima, continue.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So back to the question of how to bring talents. I would from like international talents. I would say how to bring talents even from Kanto or Tokyo to Kyushu. So actually, a company is making micro displays. It's related to semiconductor, and it's so hard to hire people in Kyushu. So in the beginning, we were thinking about expanding the team, but recently I stopped like dreaming too much about bringing talent because even from Tokyo, people don't want to come.
Why?
to
Why don't
Fukuoka.
they? What are the hurdles?
I don't know. They feel like a small city and there's nothing to do. So and salaries also. Salaries are not so high here.
But the cost of living is less.
Yes. So that's what I try to say. And especially we are in Itoshima, Kyushu campus, even though address is Fukuoka city, but actually we are in Itoshima city, like near. So they feel like, why? Like it's inaka, it's like far from the city. So it's super hard. So the only thing that makes me stay more in Fukuoka and carry on is when I heard that TSMC will have like a factory in Kumamoto. So I was like relieved. So maybe it will help, bring in engineers from, international engineers, and we will try also to bring Japanese engineers as well. Because when you make an international team, honestly, it's super hard when it's very international. So I'm struggling now. So you need Japanese people. You need to make, now the proportion I want is half Japanese, half international. Because the international is not only one country, it's different countries. So I'm like Gaikokujin Janai, like many countries. So you have to adapt, he is manager, but his management style is different from this culture, so it's super hard. So making international is also, it's good on the paper, but when it's on the gemba, it's very, very difficult. So I feel like
It reminds me of a story, I guess I can talk about it now because the company doesn't exist anymore, but there is a company, Asso Lafarge. Asso, of course, is a cement company, like a very large cement company in Japan, centered here in Fukuoka, and they had a joint venture with Lafarge. Someone is French. There's some French people. Lafarge, I think, is the largest cement company in the world. Anyways, they had with a terrible reputation. Okay, well, we'll talk about that with drinks later. But this is kind of a funny. I thought it was funny or what? Kind of sad actually. Anyway, so there was a joint venture here with this Lafarge and Asso, a very famous company here. And I met the chairperson who was at the time French. He was brought in from Lafarge to be the top of the company. And so he moved here to a beautiful, huge, whatever, the nicest apartment in Fukuoka, no doubt. A floor of something in Mochihama and all that. Came with his family. They didn't stay. He stayed. He would be here Monday to Friday at the most or whatever. But the wife and the kids, again, like what Doug was saying back there, is the schools weren't up to snuff. The wife had nothing to do and no friends or this or that, whatever. It sort of lacked. So for that caliber of company, of corporation, for that sort of people, Fukuoka at that time was lacking. Things have changed. But once again, to Rod's point too, we're not talking only about the white collar and so on and so forth, but we are talking about both here. So that's just one story. Does anyone else have anything else that would? Okay, cool. Is the microphone? Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Fico. We moved here 2 years ago.
From where?
From Indonesia. We use the startup visa. So I started a company initially in blue collar recruitment, so I can relate with the SSW. We are in Forestry, so it's also a new SSW. What I can share is our clients, one of the top reasons why our clients hesitate is they are lacking the experience of managing foreign workers. So that's one. But the solution is, I think it's interesting. So what we are trying to do now, there are two things. First is we train the leadership team. So we can attract bachelor graduates for blue collar jobs here in Japan. So we we partner with universities in Indonesia to attract forestry graduates to work as a forester in Japan, and they train that we prepare them to be the leader for the next batch, which will be high school graduates. So building on from what Fatima said, eventually they're building like more like almost 70% international foreign workers, and the Japanese workers will be the head supervisors, because foresters in Japan, the average age is 55, so a majority of them is already very senior foresters. So that's what we ended up doing. And for many that are not that entrepreneurial, what we end up doing is, why don't you become our subcontractor? So you recruit the workers and just subcontract to us, do the work for us, which is something that now we are venturing into. So that's the situation in the blue collar that we're trying to crack right now.
Interesting, great. Very good.
Thank you. I'll try to speak to two different comments that were brought up. One, the recruitment of talent, and then two, also the strategic zone initiative. So I think one of my research projects right now is working with one of the smaller cities nearby, and there is still like an ongoing rural exodus from these countryside towns and villages into more city centers. And I'm interviewing a lot of locals who have moved from these villages in the mountain areas to a more like intensely urban environment. And what I'm finding is that they do not want to leave their hometown, and they want to remain as close as possible to kind of the area that brought them up. And so I think what that means is there's probably a latent talent pool in Kyushu itself among the younger generations who maybe don't want the mountain village life, but they do want a lot of the amenities and the comforts that come from moving into a more urban environment. And in fact, I've noticed that they sort of interpret their sense of abundance, their sense of well-being, yutakasa is the Japanese term, from ecological terms, going from these countryside areas where there's a lot more communal relations. Everyone kind of knows them. They have an immediacy of nature, and then once they move into the city, they interpret their sense of abundance in terms of convenience and in terms of access to resources, and they have this sort of time cost reduction that comes with it. So I imagine if there's a way to bring up over the next decade or so the sort of latent talent in Kyushu itself, Fukuoka may not have such a problem with trying to compete with other major cities. I'll also say Fukuoka City is the only city in Japan that's growing in population outside of Tokyo, and the national population is decreasing. And so that tells you that people in Japan are moving to Fukuoka. So they do see the city as a very viable alternative, who do not want to basically go make themselves slaves to a giant urban city production machine that Tokyo is. And in terms of maybe how Japan thinks of itself domestically, not so much internationally, but they through the strategic zone initiatives, which has evolved through several renditions over the years, the most recent being the Koka Senryaku Toku, the National Strategic Special Zone. This is you can think of this as sort of like a national geographic division of labor, where the national government sees different areas within the Japanese mainland or in Kyushu as fulfilling certain roles in which they can kind of tap into their own latent strengths and their own strengths for production or innovation and so forth. And for Fukuoka, that's been the Startup City Visa program. And they utilized a framework actually from the Regional Revitalization Law in 2014 under the Abe administration to register. The city itself lobbied to the national government for this status, which is quite unusual. National governments usually choose it themselves. And through that framework, they were able to launch the Tenjin Big Bang. Yeah. And this very building we're sitting in right now is a result of this Saikai Hatsu that we're going, this urban core redevelopment that we're all seeing. And if you look at it, if you go into the city plan, the Fukuoka master plan, they do recognize that Fukuoka can be a sort of population dam to stem the flow of people going into Tokyo. And the city also gives a special certification for certain architectural buildings. They call it the Big Bang Bonus Certification. And all of these buildings, which the One Fukuoka building is one of them, the Daimyo Garden City Tower is another, There's about 8. I think there's a few more that are in the works. This is all like global city architecture. So it's designed to attract that elite foreign talent here. And I think in those terms, there's a lot that the city is doing. But what I'm also hearing from the audience is there's probably more.
And it started right here in CIC, exactly where we're sitting right now. This is Cambridge Innovation Center from Boston, Massachusetts, and we're seeing. I mean, just being a tenant here, there slowly, it's really happening. Foreign capitalized companies. I mean, big companies, Amazon or American companies like, even Apple and so forth. There was efforts to bring them from Tokyo to relocate here to save costs and so forth, at least the back offices and so forth for these big companies. But Fukuoka didn't have any buildings that were suitable for large companies that had required security, required infrastructure, certain quality. And this is one of the reasons why the Tianjin Big Bang or the Special Economic Zone these things have been spec'd that way. And time will tell whether those companies come or not, or whether they miss the wave or not, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're exactly on time for part 3. The last 30 minutes are now 26 minutes of the program. And this is where we're going to turn the mic even more over to you guys. And the question is what news story or what current event, what's on your mind in Kyushu, and what's its impact to you, and what are you thinking about? Does anyone want to get the ball rolling? Anyone come with it? Okay.
As continuing on to what the previous comments, though, too, it's just like, do we want the Tokyoization of Fukuoka? Do we want those people living here? So it's a double-edged sword. How are we moving? And this building, as it was being built, is like, this ain't my Fukuoka anymore. And the thing is, we are the old guard, and there's a new generation coming. So I guess the concept of build it and they will come. Right. And Fukuoka is building it. Or
it's not for you, Alan. This is for your children. This is actually for the next generation.
Yes,
I feel the same way. When I watch this coming up, especially this building as well, I mean, it's a big black box on the outside. My impression and feelings have changed drastically since. But no, I understand.
Obviously, you've jumped on that.
Yeah.
I haven't jumped on that yet. But also, you're out in Itoshima, right? Itoshima, where you go, and how that area is developing, and the Fukuma area is developing. So places that I or people like me would want to go, forget it. You've ruined the neighborhood.
Thank you. Take the mic away from him. Pass it down.
Hi everyone. So my name is Bastian. I'm a master's student at Graduate School of Science at Kyushu University. So I just wanted to comment also on that. What I'm hearing is actually very surprising to me, quite shocking actually, because I am someone who is going to be graduating in September. So this is a major fact about my case is I'm going to graduate in September. Why? Because I am part of the international course at Kyushu University. This is specially aimed at foreigners, for foreigners, where so you don't have to enter like the traditional way with like entrance exam and everything. It's basically only like paperwork and interview. But the downside is that you start in October. So obviously you graduate in September. And as someone who is actively seeking opportunities to stay in Kyushu, to build a future, most of companies in Japan aim their research for new talents, basically. Recruiting. So around March, April, where most of Japanese students obviously are going to graduate. And as someone who is going to graduate in September, I've lost count of the amount of companies that told me, we cannot hire you because we don't need you now. If you can wait until March or April or something, we might make it work, but what do I do between September and April? That's the question. So, exactly. So I have to hide in the mountains, maybe, I don't know. But that's my point, is that for me, for my case, the timing is just very bad because, I'm not looking for a job as a time where people are actively recruiting. And also, most of the time when I apply to a company, they tell me, okay, so if you want to join our company in September, can you move to Tokyo? This is the other way around. So this is where I'm actually like, for me, as a foreign student, this is the main, let's say, obstacle. Like, it's the timing, like the recruit.
So does anyone have a job for Bastien? Is it anyone looking to hire?
You've got any tree planting?
Tree planting? For 6 months even? For 6 months tree planting till you get your interviews. Get a job.
Okay. Man, like, there are ways to circumvent, like, for example, my professor told me if nothing works or anything, we can always not hire you, but we can always like continue your master program as a research student until April. But again, you always have to find the back door. You always have to find the trick to be able to continue. If you are not following the system, you are not inside the system. This one, and this is a big.
Sorry, hi, I'm Stefan. Just to comment on what you said, I think you made a very good point that we really feel that now Japan feels that they need to change a little bit things, or to accelerate something, like from truck drivers to engineers. But on the same time, there is this bunka, there is the corporate way of thinking and the administration that has really, really cold feet. And it's a very Japanese way of doing things, and if you are not in the right place at the right time, it's not going to work. And it's a very deep cultural problem at a certain point. And right now, I feel like we are in a way that a little bit like you would make a hotel out of a train. You know, it's nice and comfortable, but you leave the lights on. It's exactly what we are now. I think what you say is really that everything looks fine, and why don't you finish the job? So that was just my comment.
Okay. Yeah, let's pass the mic around. Anyone have anything like current event related or? But no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Cooper. I work at Fukuoka Institute of Technology, and kind of bouncing off what you were saying, like we're really pushing for international students, mostly through Asia, Thailand. We do have a few students from Honduras, but I think there's kind of a confusion about what comes next. Like they can put them in a lab that speaks English, they can do their research in English, but then Fukuoka seems to be so Japanese-centric, even when it comes to IT and technology, that if they want a job, it seems to be that Tokyo or Osaka is really the only option they have. So I have exchange students would love to stay in Fukuoka, but it's kind of, stay in Fukuoka number 1, go back home number 2, and then Tokyo would be number 3. So they end up kind of training these students and then losing the talent because they can't keep them in Fukuoka. So I think it's kind of just a culture issue where there's not quite that next step for non-Japanese speakers in Fukuoka.
I really agree with you. I think sometimes the next step, I was just wondering how many international organizations are there in Fukuoka? I think, or where there's English language being used. I think Rakuten is one of them, maybe Line.
UN Habitat.
Sorry?
UN Habitat.
UN Habitat, yeah. It's just like a couple of 5 maybe, and there's not enough opportunities in that sense to grow further. And I think that's a bit shame in that sense, because like you said, you're losing talent, it doesn't continue. And also agree with you have to fit in the right system, you have to be in the right time, and it's kind of frustrating and losing chances there as well.
Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just something that sparked from the conversation about graduating at the wrong time. I actually had someone come to the engineer cafe who was rejected for PR, permanent residency, because they had too long of a gap between their study in university and their work history. And so I get a lot of consultations in these kind of messy cases where someone's done a bit of this job and then started a company, and then it was a startup, it didn't work out, goes back. These kind of messy careers I think are really common in like startups and IT. Combined with the fact we've just seen in the news recently, the conditions for PR are getting more restrictive, the conditions for naturalization and from 5 years to 10 years. It seems like a lot of these people, whether they're IT or they're truck drivers, they're going to come here and work, and then the path to a permanent life here is getting harder and harder, narrower and narrower.
Yeah.
I really don't want to burst the bubble on this conversation, but since this, I wanted to actually ask a question since I'm in a room full of other international people. That's not related to it's related to a recent event.
Yeah.
So how many people here actually went to the flower show that was recently held at the Botanical Garden? Okay, so very few people. Okay,
Yeah.
that's just very good to know.
You should ask how many people knew about it.
Oh, how many people knew about it? Okay, so there was quite a few.
Okay, that's
Yeah, okay. I was just curious because, like, I work with the City Hall. So I work a lot with promoting these kinds of events.
Right.
And it's interesting to me is like these kind of events, and at least in my circle, because it's kind of narrow, it's all Japanese people I'm working with. They're touted as these ways of bringing a lot of, not internationalization per se, but changing the brand image of Fukuoka to some extent.
Right.
By connecting event planning with sustainability. That's like the big term that everyone's pumping out all the time, constantly, in every aspect of City Hall, actually. Sustainability, SDGs, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't say blah, 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 because those are very worthy goals. But it's just that you hear them.
Right.
But, like, I was just curious practically because I was wondering, because I was like, I don't see that many people from abroad here. So I'm wondering what the marketing was like on this event. And I thought it was a very nice event. I went there for my job, and I thought, like, wow, this is actually really cool. There was a lot of cool flowers. I mean, if you're really into gardening, they had some good restaurants there too. But I was just curious.
Are you talking about the event at the Botanical Garden?
That's right.
The main venue.
No, but the main venue is another interesting story. That's why I remarked on the airport being used as
the hangar.
Yeah, because they actually converted the lawn there into an event space that can be held after hours, which kind of reflects a growing trend among all city planning in this city of using what you have in order to create potential for business. So, for example, that airport carrier with the airplanes in it that you can camp in, they're just trying to find as much possible ways of generating money using pre-existing assets.
Sure.
And I'm not sorry. I don't really have a point to say. I was just curious about the flower show, to be honest.
Right.
But it seems like I was just remarking a bit about on that event in general and seeing if anybody knew about it. Or
would you have gone to that flower show if it wasn't related to your work?
I wouldn't have if I had not been there beforehand. After I'd been there for the pre-event show last year, I said, well, this is really great. And then I wanted to go to this event, so I asked at work if I could get away because it was on during the weekdays.
Yeah, but that explains why everyone put up their hand. They knew about it, but they didn't go.
And I think that in turn reflects on an overall trend I've noticed with City Hall promotion initiatives, where they have all this really interesting stuff going on, but very poor at getting that information out to people effectively.
Yeah, but we all got the information.
Oh, that's okay. I see.
But so maybe more interesting events.
Again, the question was, or we put in the emails, what's going on in Kyushu that's caught your mind?
My name is Kerry Greer. I've been here about as long as Nick. I had a business I started here in Fukuoka in 1985 when there was actually zero help for foreign entrepreneurs. I sold my business to a Japanese corporation in 2019. I've hired probably 40 foreign staff into my business. I've raised a family here. I've been through the school problem, so I deeply understand that. And I suppose in my semi-retirement, I've invested in village revitalization. So I sort of understand a lot of what's going on here tonight. But the point I'd like to make is the one about education for global talent families. Because let's face it, the type of top global talent you're talking about comes here with a family or wants a family, or is going to have a family. And when you can't get your 3 or 4, 5-year-olds into preschool or your elementary school kids into an elementary school where they can probably keep touch with maybe English, but also fit into the Japanese system because that's where their mates are. You've got this very difficult situation that's not being catered for here except to a small degree by the international school, which I think covers some points but misses the Japanese side. So I think the focus for Fukuoka and the education should be, if they want this global talent, find a way to have schools that cater both the dual program of English and Japanese. I think you'll find that the Japanese community, at least at a certain level of professionalism within the Japanese community, those professionals would like their children to have the chance of bilingual educations as well. And I think there's a real opportunity there for, if not central Japanese Fukuoka city schools, but some of the schools on the periphery, where, let's face it, a lot of foreign talent that doesn't want to live in the middle of the city with their kids. They don't want to live cheek and jowl like the Japanese apartment living is. They're looking for those rural places, whether it's Hiroshima, the Zaifu, outsides of the Zaifu, or where I am out in Amagi, Akizuki area, which is still only 45 minutes from Fukuoka Airport anyway. So some of those regions, if they could provide the type of living, open living, nature, environment, but ready access into the central city, plus an education for their kids at a school that not just provided Japanese in a really Japanese way, and that can be quite brutal, but somewhere where there was a more international approach. I think there's a lot of opportunities in the education sector. I could probably waffle on about all sorts of stuff that's been brought up, but I won't. But when my voice is in better condition, I'll come back to another meeting.
All right.
Thanks for letting me speak now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, please.
I just want to add on to that. As I mentioned, my daughter's at Futaba, which is a bilingual program, and it's excellent. But we comment about the bilingual education. Japanese people want that too. At Futaba, there's 3 grades. It's an all-girls school. In the elementary school, they have 3 classes, and up until now, it was 2 of the regular Japanese and 1 of the bilingual. As of April, next month, they're going to have demands of the parents. It's going to be 2 of the bilingual program, only 1 of the Japanese, because they were turning down. Lots of kids wanted to get into the bilingual program, and there weren't that many parents wanted to go to the Japanese program. So I think Japanese families want to raise their children internationally as much as possible.
You're talking about a certain elitism of the private school. I think that's what you need to get away from for Japanese families to really be involved. I'd like you to look very closely at where the Japanese families who go to Futaba come from and what they do and what their income levels are. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I understand that, and I know it's fair. But I think a lot of Japanese families, regardless of income, they really want their kids to have international English.
Fico here. I have a fair share of comments to this. I am a father of 4, all daughters, only 3 in Fukuoka. And one of the reasons is because one of the toughest decisions when we move here is whether to Japanize our kids fully. Because not enough options for like bilingual school, and if we are going to survive in the long run, we think let's go all in. But I don't think that is something that all families are willing to do. And yeah, that's one comment based on our experience. The second one is because of that we underestimated the paperwork of sending kids to Japanese school. My wife is here. So taking care of those 3 kids, it's a very daunting job for the mom. And even though they have the app, we still got tons of paperwork, and at the level where we are never imagined before. I mean, we that is totally unexpected. I think that is one thing. If there's one thing that we can suggest to make this city even more livable. We love the city, don't get us wrong. We love the city. But if there's one thing that we can change, is to bring our nanny from Indonesia. That will free a lot of bandwidth, because those paperworks, I don't think those papers impact our the education quality of our kids, and it doesn't show that we love them that much. Like if we can outsource that to someone. We hired like part-time, some kind of a virtual PA, Japanese, based in Kawasaki, based in Yokohama, because we cannot find one in Fukuoka, to outsource some of those paperwork, because all of those are in Japanese, right? And we came here without being able to speak Japanese, so it's a leap of faith. So those are two things that I really wanted to share. So 5 or 4.
Okay, we have time for maybe 2 more.
Thank you, Nick. I was going to just follow up on the education thing. You know, I work for the United Nations Habitat in Cross for the last 18 years or so.
Yes.
Many of my colleagues left Fukuoka because they could not educate their kids. They come here because the remuneration, the allowances here are very good. So they come here and they don't have a proper school for their kids. And they just, after 1 year, they leave.
I think we have the conclusion. The answer to the main question of the evening, how to, or how not to, how to prepare Kyushu to attract more talent, not only global, but just talent. Yeah. And with that, I think, we will turn over to our panel, to Kirk and Leonie, and why don't you each have a closing comment for us?
Yeah, I think we saw education as a big one here, and also administration is one. I think everybody knows in the Japanese culture that it's one of the problematic things. Fukuoka, was mentioned before. Other cities say, be like Fukuoka. We have to be like Fukuoka. Fukuoka is growing. I do believe that. It's just not there yet, but it's on the way. I think TSMC was mentioned in the past. It's really impressive what kind of growth it brings to that region, and if other companies, just 1 or 2, could make a really substantial change in Fukuoka, I think. I've been to TSMC, to Kumamoto. It's really inaka, and suddenly you see 13 cranes making the buildings. It's really impressive to see the area. So I think slowly we're getting there. I think this community, or just to discuss these things together, is also a first step in getting things better. Yeah. I think, so I really appreciate for the opportunity to see, to networking, I think is always a good opportunity as well, to see what everybody's doing, what they're working for. I think that's really interesting to see. And I think also, you mentioned before, bottom up, it starts with us, kind of, also to make a change in that. Give it to me.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about education from 5 to through to continued education when you're growing, your career and all that. And I think that's something that Fukuoka has to do to differentiate and to bring in more talent. And it's true that Fukuoka is growing, and it's the only growing part of Japan, really. And we have to remember the other side of that, which is making it harder, and that's Japan's demographic crisis. And we can be in a booming Fukuoka, but we forget about it. The country is dying, and the forecast is the population by the end of the century will be less than half what it is today. So how does Japan deal with that? And does it, from a city planning perspective, how do they concentrate people in just certain viable towns with good education and infrastructure and all that? So I think that Fukuoka is bucking the trend, and I think somehow Fukuoka can shine a light on how to do things differently for the rest of Japan, but Japan as a whole has a huge demographic crisis that is still not really dealing with.
Well,
last time you mentioned a big earthquake, that'll take care of half of it, right?
Well, it'll send all the growth here to Fukuoka, which will be help out.
Well, on that happy note, I think we will wrap up here. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. A little bit unpredictable. We learned a lot from this as well too. We'll be sharing a survey, feedback form, but please fill that out. Give us your frank opinion. We'd like to brush this up and improve it, and we do intend on having it almost every month, certainly every month for the next little while. So you'll see in our newsletter, and if you follow Fukuoka Now, you'll know when that is. And we're going to continue, for those who have time, on the basement first floor of this building. There's a place called Bistro Aki, and we got, I think happy hour goes to 10 o'clock or something like that. Really cheap beers and oolong tea for just 250 yen. It's a good casual spot. Please join us down there. And we have to get out of here in the next 10-15 minutes. Thanks a lot for coming out. Appreciate it.